The main thing is you are here and you are a live audience. I'm hoping it's anyway. And does anyone usually watch the programme, listen to the podcast, any of that kind of stuff? What? A few.
Don't look at me.
And they still turned up. This is the concern. Thank you very much for coming. It's not. Maybe we're live.
If we're live, connect to my phone.
No, I'm on the free Wi-Fi thanks to the good people at St Helens. So fingers crossed. If it works, it works. If it doesn't, it doesn't. And it doesn't look like it. So
can you just record it?
Yeah, that's what I'm doing. That's Steve Mascord. He's got hats to.
I'm not a technical genius.
He's got. What have you got these hats from?
Well, I wasn't going to load the car up when I left London with jerseys and singlets and stuff. But I thought hats, you can carry them easily.
I do like the idea that you're going to undercut the World Cup by somehow just selling stuff in the back of your car.
Well, no,
just outside the stadium boundaries, not actually.
If I don't pull up at the stadium, I think I'm okay. But also, I kind of didn't want to leave my wife to post out orders and stuff. So, for instance, someone ordered a Cook Islands one on Amazon the other day, and I was able to just get it out of the boot and take it to the Salford post office and send it off. So, I don't want to lumber her with my unsuccessful business.
International marketer, journalist, podcaster, anything else? Anything you don't do?
I can't dance.
You can when you're drunk. I've seen you.
That shan't be tonight, Phil. We're in a library.
I've got footage.
Mike Critchley from the St Helens Star. How are you?
I'm not bad. It's been an interesting day though. Wasn't expecting the Lee Leopards to come along. But yeah.
Have you all seen that, by the way? The Lee rebranding?
No.
And you're all suitably impressed by that, aren't you? One person. That's.
Why don't we do hands up if you like it, and we'll tell the viewers how many people.
Is this like Lee Leopards as such, or like the kids and things?
They actually rebranded as Lee Leopards.
Yeah, it's purely based on Derek's shirt. Derek's favourite shirt.
Exactly, Zach Hardigan changed his spots. That was a joke today. Yeah. We had no hands. For the record, no one put their hand up and said they liked it.
No, that one. There you go.
One, okay. Oh, sorry. Okay.
One of the 1,000 people here today. They've signed 10 players as well. How much have you enjoyed the World Cup so far, Mike?
I think it's been good. Certainly enjoyed Newcastle. It's a tremendous game. Everybody talked Samoa up, and you could see they was really underdone. And once they crumpled, didn't they? But there'll be more to come from them. But I thought England played well. I thought the St Helens lads played well. I thought Jack Wellesby was outstanding. But I've enjoyed it all. I enjoyed the PNG Tonga game at our place. Really good. Proper got stuck into each other. The pre-match was brilliant, and I just think this is what you want, isn't it? This is an event we've waited for, and we're not going to see one for a good while now, are we? So we may as well make the most of it.
Jack Wellesby potentially going to the Dolphins, as he was asked in the press conference afterwards. That was good. He didn't seem happy about that, did he, Christian Wolf?
Don't be depressing me.
He said he didn't need to. He's pretty much denied it, didn't he? He said his eyes are re-signing him for 2 years. Didn't he say that? 3 years?
3 years.
3 years.
Dolphins have eyes on England international, but rebuffed by Wade Bennett's assistant.
We're going to get 2-3 years of that, though, aren't we?
Yeah, and then when he takes over the job, and then after that, whichever other Saints players come on the market.
I think he's taken it as a compliment because we've always had this. We had this in the 70s when Phil Lowe had a good World Cup and he went to hospital. It happens, doesn't it? As soon as you put yourself in that sort of global shop window, people are going to throw stuff at you. In terms of we want you playing the best league in the world, and that's what it is. Isn't it?
So I didn't ask Steve how his World Cup's gone so far because I only saw you on Tuesday. But I mean, how do you enjoy Tonga, PNG, and Wales versus Cook Islands?
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys know, but probably no one else does. I'm actually not basing myself anywhere for the 5 weeks. I'm just going town to town.
He's very disappointed because there's no free food for him today.
Yeah. If they put on a match, I can eat in the press room. But so for me, it's kind of like it's a challenge in all those logistical ways when you're on the road. As far as what day you wash and losing things and planning, planning. So it's a lot of fun. I'm actually finding it fun because I'm doing. I see it as a good opportunity, to pump out a lot of content. So I'm doing like a vlog where I'm like following myself around. Hope I don't see myself. And I put the first one up last night. I was up to 2:00 editing it last night. The first one from Saturday, and I really enjoyed it. I just really enjoyed doing it, and it's completely like I'm completely removed from everyday life. Like some people say, I've never actually lived there, but I'm completely removed from everyday life. I'm just following the World Cup from town to town, and I did a bit of work before the World Cup, and that's kind of helping to fund me give the money back to them by following them around. All the money they gave me, I'm now spending back to give back to them. So yeah, I've really enjoyed it, but it's a challenge every day to find an equilibrium. I don't know, like when you're young, you're more. I think you're resistant to unpredictability the older you get. So when you're younger, you're happy for unexpected things and problems to be tossed at you every day, and then you get more sedentary and you kind of like you kind of resent surprises after a while. So I'm kind of trying to kind of hold that at bay and try to live like I did when I was 20, but now I'm 53. So that's my World Cup. So fun.
Are you on TikTok? You're not having a midlife crisis?
No. We didn't have TikTok when I was.
Well, I mean now you can.
Yeah, I don't know. I mean TikTok. I don't know. Maybe I need to learn it between now and the next. I'll tell you what. I will learn about TikTok between now and the next time I appear on this program, and I'll give you a full report on how I find it.
When are we going to book next?
Oh, I don't know.
We're in Wigan next week, so I mean, you're a far better audience than them.
And they wouldn't go to Wigan, would they? The people here.
Why not?
They probably never set foot there. If they...
I mean, I did enjoy the hot pot pie on Tuesday. It was a culinary experience at the. So they were kids saying, because usually in the media we get a sandwich and a Mars bar. We still got a Mars bar though. That was the good news.
Didn't get any crisps.
No crisps. Very disappointing. When we used to tag around with Gary Schofield, they used to take at least 3 Mars bars
till half time.
But isn't it right that room at St Helens, the media's been kicked out of there, and there isn't a press room at St Helens anymore. There is none. So the World Cup has basically opened this space back up and given it back to us to an extent.
The audience hearts bleeds that we have a nice warm room to see.
Yeah. Well,
But no Wi-Fi.
But no, oh.
Oh yeah, so don't. Yeah.
Faye, how's your knee?
It's
Most
good.
important question.
I told you about the previous question.
Good.
Yeah, no, it's good. I'm back playing now. So yeah, I can run and I can function better than I could last time. I was probably on this podcast, but yeah, it's all good.
Predictable question. You can ask predictable questions because now you're so far removed from it. Can you look back on it yet, or is it?
Yeah. It's just stupid.
It was
a moment of.
I mean, I shouldn't say this, but there's a moment where you just laugh at how ridiculous it was because you're not tackling some big prop forward or anything or putting through a big kick. You're jumping up and down and celebrating.
Yeah.
But at least you won the cup and you got a medal.
Yeah, that was. What did I play? 11 minutes. 11 minutes, like 36 seconds, and then I was sat in
11 minutes and 36 seconds exactly.
Yeah, I think it was. That quick, and then I was in a leg brace for about 8 months after that, and then learning to walk again. But yeah, no, it's over. I do laugh about it now, but back then, no.
I didn't laugh when it happened.
No.
It makes it sound like evil. I mean, I fell off a stage on Friday, but unfortunately, no one watched that. How have you enjoyed the World Cup so far?
Yeah, I've loved it. So we met some of the Saints girls for the England game, and we went out as a squad to watch that. So that was pretty good. But I think when you're a halfback, you watch the other halfbacks and you watch their every movement. And I just thought Jack Wellesby was just a level above everyone else. He's literally the heartbeat of that England squad. So he was really exciting to watch.
Shall I tell you about that? On Friday in Newcastle, in front of a crowd which was, what's the word I'm looking for? Infinitely smaller than this one.
All right.
It was only in the tens rather than the thousands that it is tonight.
It was a double-figure audience. Both figures were 0. And
don't shed light
I
on
know.
magic.
We're not live at so we espouse the theory that Jack Wellesby is the future Sam Tompkins, which I don't really want to compare him with, oh, look at that. Lost the audience already.
Bristles.
Lost the audience. Because Sam Tompkins, great player, but fans might not like his antics, but Jack Wellesby, great player, and he's ruffling people's hair and stuff and winding them up. He's got a bit of the devil about him, and that's a good thing.
Yeah, it is, and I think for someone so young, though, to play at the level he does in some games for St Helens, the Grand Final, the Challenge Cup, to keep his cool is pretty phenomenal, and for years to come, I hope he stays at the club, and I know people are talking, like you said, when he's on the biggest stage, people will start offering anything to get him there, but yeah, for me, I think he will stay at Saints. I think he's the real heartbeat of Saints. But yeah, comparing him to Sam Tompkins,
Compare him to Alex Murphy, who of course came through this esteemed club and at 17 was very much like that. Precocious talent.
Precocious.
I'm not sure he's like, they say if he went to the NRL, what position would he play? Because wiry, creative halves are kind of not the thing in the NRL, are they? You know?
I don't know. Munster's not.
Yeah,
not that far up.
maybe.
The interesting thing to throw the question that Mike asked about Wellesby to Faye is that if England's women come onto this major stage and are viewed by NRLW clubs, who at the moment clearly are expanding and looking for new talent, do you think that any of our players will end up being enticed over there?
So I know a few of the girls who have won Woman of Steel previously was offered. I know Georgia Roach was spoken to by a few NRL clubs when she got Woman of Steel, and if I was some of them England girls who were being seen by NRLW clubs, I would go at their age. There's like Leah Burke's still quite young in her early 20s, upcoming winger, and she wants to travel. She wants to head over to Australia, so that would be the perfect opportunity for her to earn a living, I guess, playing for an NRLW. And it is the best league in the world. You want to play there. That's probably everyone's goal. But yeah, I think some of the girls will, but a lot of that England squad are coming probably towards the back end of the career, wanting a family, wanting to settle down. So maybe the younger girls, like Holly Dodd could be one, who could go and travel and spend some time playing in the NRL. So yeah, there is opportunities what are coming around, but hopefully from the media side of things after the Women's World Cup, that maybe our game will step up to that notch and be on par with the NRLW.
Were you at the Women's Super League Awards?
No, I wasn't.
Oh, I mean, how disappointing is that? An actual star player was there and I managed to sneak my way in. he did miss much.
Did Ralph speak it?
He did. He was, as I said on the day, to misquote Ralph from me, he said he was very giddy to be there. Just ask his wife how giddy he gets. Not the worst thing he said that way.
It's not the worst.
No. Phil, how much have you enjoyed the last 2 days since I saw you in the World Cup?
Oh, the last 2 days.
Well, last Monday, 'cause I
exceptional.
saw you on Tuesday, I was there.
I just think the whole of the World Cup has lived up to expectation. I don't know how you judge it, and I think we need to get away from apologising for it. So I wish we didn't spend too much time, even on social media, saying, oh, what are the ticket sales like? I mean, there was a media briefing this afternoon after the first round of games. They are expecting to sell, in total, more than 571,000 tickets, which is what the Women's Euros did. They are talking about the tickets that have already sold for the final will set a record for receipts in the Northern Hemisphere, and that although the tournament is supposed to be cost neutral, built into that is the money that they're going to give to the International Federation for International Rugby League to prosper on the back of this World Cup. So however you judge it, at the moment it's been a success. I think you couldn't have asked much more of Newcastle. It's hard to think that wasn't a week ago.
It does feel like a long time ago.
The thing is, Phil, you can't. You're
Different
right.
Prime Minister ago.
You know, you're 100% correct about that, and the fact that they're already surpassed 2017, and they've already £1 million in receipts past 2013. But when you say to start with, we're going to sell 1 million tickets, and then you say we're going to sell 750,000 tickets, it just has to be pointed out. It just has to be said.
Oh, yeah.
You know, you can't pretend that you never said that before. So even though it's a success, and I agree with you, it's a success, I don't think you can expect people to forget the earlier predictions, and that's it. And some people will look at those, and just because they don't hit what they said they would, some people you can't dissuade them from the idea that therefore that's failure.
Oh, yeah.
And you never will dissuade them from it.
No, but I think we shouldn't be focusing on that. We should be looking at the first round of games. We've seen every nation play. Virtually every game, there's been a story. The story for the England game was the margin with which England won, but seeing the Australians back on English soil has been fantastic. It's what, six years since we saw the green and golds play over here. So there's a whole generation of players that we haven't seen live, and we do see more of them than we ever have on a weekly basis because we can now tune into matches on Sky. But to see Cameron Munster run out with an Australian jersey, it's fantastic. Then you've got the story of the emerging nations. You know, the cheer when Jamaica kicked a penalty goal just before half-time at Headingley on Sunday was unbelievable. You know, they're 18 points down, and the whole of the stadium is rising up because they've got points. And the performance of Greece, the 2 tries they scored, arguably as good as anything we've seen so far. And probably the most encouraging thing for those of us that love the sport and want it to be shown on its biggest stages. Then you get social media pictures coming back from Athens of people in a bar leaping up and down because Greece have scored a try. You know, that is spreading the footprint of rugby league. Clearly, the way Lebanon played on Sunday night, a lot of focus on where were all the people at Warrington, not enough focus on how good were Lebanon playing against the number 1 ranked team in the world. The game here on Tuesday, the best game of the first round of matches. So much controversy, so many talking points. And then Wales, dubbed as the underdogs, took the Cook Islands to the last play of the game. So as a spectacle, it's hard not to be ridiculously excited by what we've seen. And if that's only the beginning, before the games get even more meaningful and competitive, I may well explode in the next 5 minutes.
The other thing is that you look at the reach that the television audience gives you, a terrestrial television audience, because we tend to live in a bubbling league at times. And I think because we're on Sky, we tend to be cocooned there, don't we? When it's on BBC and you can see it. I had my mate from Merthyr Tydfil texting me madly last night when he was watching the Wales game. He's a rugby union fan. He was absolutely going, I thought we was going to get hammered here. What's going on? And that's the sort of reach that having it on BBC has, and it's great. We look at, why don't we have the sort of characters that we had in the 70s and 80s? Part of that is because we're not on grandstand. The household names aren't there because we're on our little Sky ghetto, aren't we, for a lot extent.
And people are talking about Jack Wellesby, who would not have seen him play until he marshalled that England performance on Saturday. So the more that Dom Young can score tries in the way he did, the more people will recognise the stars that we take for granted.
Just wait till they all see David Fafita.
He's big, isn't he?
He's huge man.
He was very good too. I guess he hadn't done much press, and he'd been shielded from the press, and he went to the press conference here, and he answered every question, and it took a bit of prodding to get a long answer off him. But in the end, he said he almost played in the mid-season test for Tonga, and he talked about his family and what it meant to. That's the expression. Unfortunately, you hear. I mean, it's that what it means is kind of like it loses its meaning because we hear it so often. So I try to avoid using that expression. But yeah, he was. He was very good. No one's been kind of prima donna-ish. At the doing their media. And I spoke to a fellow last night, Davey Mawali, who scored an amazing try for Cook Islands. I counted 5 people he bumped off or carried over the line with him. And he's played a couple of games for Souths, and he was just so kind of like a lot of these kids never been to England before, already whinging about the weather, even though it's going to get a lot worse, and just blown away by what they find themselves in the middle of. I'm told that the Cook Islands rooms are like they're in this really nice hotel in Middlesbrough because Captain Cook is from there, and the rooms they're in are like £500 a night rooms. So if you're Davey Mawali, you'll never go back to the Days Inn or the the local motel because you're suddenly staying in this place where you can't see to the other side of your hotel room. So they're all. I think we forget these amazing experiences that a lot of players are having, and the women in wheelchair coming up are going to have, and just got to draw those stories out. But as I said the other day, unfortunately, as a reporter with games every day, you never get to, like we talked about, was it a shoulder charge, and should Papua New Guinea have got a penalty try the other night? Unfortunately, there's another game the next day, and also only some teams, very few teams, have travelling media. So if there's some drama like that tomorrow night, you'll be reading about it for 3 or 4 days because there's travelling media with the Aussies. All the other teams, bar England, are basically the media managers sending stuff back. So any controversies, there's certainly no travelling media with Papua New Guinea. There was a fellow asked a question on behalf of the Post-Courier, the Port Moresby Post-Courier the other night. So there's no one to kind of fly the flag for their controversies. Whereas, you know what I mean, we just move on to the next game. And again, it's something you learn as the tournament goes on. Okay, I've got to learn to focus on that thing from 2 nights ago. It's still alive, that thing from 2 nights ago. Don't move straight on to the next day. And so I think we're all kind of learning to get into the rhythm of a tournament, quite apart from me deciding what day to do washing. You know, so it's really fascinating intellectually, just the way it's being consumed by people, you know.
Judging by the numbers on YouTube of the press conferences from Tuesday, I should have adopted either Tonga or Papua New Guinea.
Yeah,
They've gone mad for it. They've gone mad. The number of YouTube comments.
Yeah.
And as you can imagine, we don't get millions of views of all our videos, but these have gone gangbusters in Australia. It's mad.
Yeah. Tonga is amazing. The last World Cup, I was posting press conferences on YouTube, and I've been doing it a little different this time. I've been putting them up for patrons first, and then up for everyone else a couple of days later. But I can't tell you the actual numbers or the figures, but the response we got to the warm-up game, which I was involved in organising, it was on a platform called Recast. I've got Recast every morning sending me things. Yeah, I've got Recast sending me things every day now going, they're a startup and they were so thrilled with the numbers. They're like, what can we get on next? Can you put the press conference up? They're just blown away by the interest in Tonga. So I don't think that's been properly leveraged yet. I mean, they don't think they've got a website yet.
Have they got a Twitter feed, Tom? Is it Samoa's? No, it's Tonga's Twitter feed. I can't.
It's old. Tonga's Twitter. Yeah, I don't know if they've got an active one. I think they've got very good. They've got a really good social media guy travelling with them. Like he does like amazing state of the art videos and stuff. But a lot of the younger kids who are working in social media now, Twitter's old hat. It's for people like us. So they don't bother getting on Twitter. Like the team don't bother getting on Twitter.
So I get on TikTok, you see.
Yeah.
That's probably last year's thing. There's something new that the young people know. Is it something? I was going to say, Faye, what do the young people do?
What do you get? What do you want, Faye?
Just Twitter.
Oh, right, there you go.
Yeah. I'm not cool enough to be on TikTok. My students use that. I'm like...
Instagram?
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. Yeah.
How often do you post on Instagram? Once a week?
Not a lot. Yeah. Not that cool.
Facebook?
Yeah, I use Facebook. But, no, yeah.
The Tongans and the Papua New Guineans don't use Facebook to find our videos, but they do find them on YouTube.
But you're talking about Papua New Guinea, and you look how far they've come. They played their first ever game in British soil against the St Helens Amateurs 43 years ago. The St Helens Amateurs won. And you look at them now, the world, you know, they're up there with the top 5, 6, 7 nations, aren't they? And that probably gives hope to all them other nations that people say, why are they in the World Cup? You look at that sort of, how that can ripple through, you know, through the world, really.
Well, I didn't realise one of the great stat I didn't know, which I only learned last night, is that Wales haven't won a World Cup game in 22 years, and their last win was at Widnes against Papua New Guinea, 2000. So, and last night they went so close. But you know, the thing with Papua New Guinea is, and as the coach of Fiji said, is that there's a difference between players who are born there and the issues that those coaches have, and the players who've been in NRL or Super League systems for longer. The players who are born there tend to be got a lot of natural talent, but they don't know when to pull the trigger. Whereas the players who've been born there sometimes who've been in the NRL system, need to be encouraged to pull the trigger and show their flair. So, you know, if you're Matt Parrish and Christian Wolf, you've got a very different problem to Stanley Tepp and Wise Catavarado. It's very interesting.
I think...
who's this? Is it former Wakefield Trinity prop forward Kyle Amor? I think we stuck you on the end.
Right, no apologies. So running that Leeds traffic, it's not great, is it?
West Yorkshire's terrible. It's terrible, just terrible place. You know, the right side of the penalties. Let's jump straight into it then, Carl. How much have you enjoyed the World Cup so far?
Oh, loving it, mate. You know, it's been awesome, and I think it all kicked off with that England game up at Newcastle. Look, I don't think anyone saw that result coming. You know, I was umming and ahhing all the way up. I was doing the radio for 5 Live, and I couldn't make my mind up which way it was going to go. And you know, I'll shamefully admit that I thought Samoa would just pip them. You know, that's what I kept bringing back to. But you know, what a performance it was from them, wasn't it? You know, and just the way they completely dismantled them in that second half was incredible to watch. And I think it's probably been the best thing for the game over here. You know, for the rest of the World Cup as well. It was so important to get off to that good start, and you know, hopefully that'll be a reflection come Saturday at the Bolton Stadium, when it should be pretty much sold out, I'm led to believe. So you know, and that's all down to the players, what they did. You know, it's We all knew that this tournament was going to have more eyes on it than ever before, but for the English as well, and for them to kick off like that, it's incredible. So well done to them.
I'll let you settle in because I was about to ask Mike about Christian Wolf, and then I realised, Kyle Amor's in now as well. You might know him a bit more, but you've spoken to him every week for the last few years. Mm-hmm. What makes him such a special coach, both for St Helens and for Tonga as well?
I don't know. He seems to get stuff out of players, and he seems to have that sort of collective buy-in from everybody. He's pretty bloody honest as well. Put it this way, I wouldn't want to fight him. He's pretty direct.
Can you list every Super League coach in order of who you would like to fight?
Do you know what? I did this once, and there wasn't anybody on it. Because even the little guys, if you think of all our coaches, you've got to be pretty pugnacious to actually play the game. It doesn't matter how big you are, isn't it? But now he's a pretty. I've always, my dealings with him was pretty straight up. I've had coaches who've been too honest, who tell you too much to the detriment of the team. And I've had coaches who just basically tell you nothing really. I won't name them, but there's coaches where you can't actually get a page. You can get 5 pages a week out of Wolfie.
It's that point in the season where, certainly covering Wakefield, where by the end of the season there's nothing going on, and you go to the press conference pretty much you think, I haven't got a clue what I'm going to ask this week because there's nothing left.
There's never nothing going on though, is there? If you get to a point where there's nothing going on, there's always stuff in there, apart from, I don't know, last week of December.
I was St Helens tend to be up there winning things, you see. There's always something to look forward to.
Well, it's all right in St Helens though, because we get to December, we've got the darts, haven't we? We've got 3 world-class darts, so we're never short stuff, are we?
Well, I think on that, even if they don't win something, there's a story there as well, isn't there? So you're right. At your top clubs, there's always something going on for sure.
Well, we get more coverage, we get more sort of traction with readers when we're doing Portland because you're different from the club. When you're winning, you're no different from the club feed, really. In a way, apart from how you write it. Certainly when you're losing, you can actually differentiate it yourself.
Don't fight Lee Radford.
Samoa's Lee Radford.
Tonga did that.
But you'd fancy you arm wrestling Tony Smith.
Rowan Smith?
Rowan Smith, yeah.
Which coaches would fight unfair, which would bite and
that have been at stands?
No. Oh, you can answer that if you like. Yeah.
I don't know, I bet Royce was a bit crafty.
Royce. He'd buy you beer afterwards.
He did.
I actually was talking to Mike after a game was saying how the kind of the days of the rounds person are almost over now, where the media, they have kids, they come in, they get spat out, they go and do something else, and the system really discourages you now from staying at the job into, should I say middle age, or is that offensive?
No, I'm going to be officially late 50s next week. So
right.
Next month.
All right, that's second. Yeah. So the system now doesn't really. There's a lot of reasons to get out, and there's not many reasons to stay. And Mike said to me, he goes, we just do it because we like it. We want to do it, And that really stuck. It sounds like a really simple thing to say, but it really sort of stuck in my head when he said that to me, because that when I was coming through, all the local papers. They all had someone, about our age who'd been around the team for years and years, and that's increasingly rare now because you're expected to do so much that just leaving the office is a rarity and is considered. You make it feel like you're having a jolly if you leave the office and go to a training session or a press conference because there's so much to churn out and obviously there's protecting the brand, and you get now kind of blackballed if you write something they don't like, and they get away with doing that. So it's hard to stick around. So I certainly got a lot of admiration for Mike because he stuck around. He's covering one of the best teams in the world, and I'm sure it's not easy.
No.
And with
His worst jobs.
His worst jobs, it is. It's a great job. It is a great job. Yeah.
So if I didn't ask Kyle now, would he fight Christian Wolf? Would you think that's not? I've missed my duty as a follow-up question.
I think it's a very fair question. I'd love to know the answer.
Well, we've wrestled a few times, so he's not the heaviest bloke. That's all I'll say. So, but no, look, he's been brought up cage fighting and bloody, all that mad stuff he used to do. He was a boxer, wasn't he, when he was young? Afro Savage, I'm led to believe his fighting name was, and he's told us stories about how he's... did you not know that? No. Yeah, Afro Savage, you can Google it, you can see him and everything. I think we all had a laugh about that trade a few years back. But anyways, no, look, he likes the competitive side of it, doesn't he? You know, and he instills that in his team. So yeah, look, he's obviously a handy bloke, isn't he? Do you know what I mean? But we're all grown men, aren't we? So
What's he like to play under?
he's intense, you know. I think, and I think that's the key to winning all those trophies has been that he doesn't have a day off, and the demands that he puts on the players and the playing group, you know, they have to be met every day, and you know that takes some doing. It does. It sometimes can bother the lads a couple of times, you know, just mentally having to be at that level all the time. I think that's one thing in sport we perhaps look over, the fact that what this side has done, you know, it's going to be pretty damn hard to replicate again, because it's the consistent level of, and not only that, you have to look through the number of losses that they've had in that as well is phenomenal, really. You know, there hasn't been a year where, you know, a lot of the top sides have lost a lot of games, and this side's rarely, I think Wolf's record was he'd only lost 20% of his games or so, or 20 out of, like, it's madness really, isn't it, you know. But that comes about through an everyday belief of what you're doing, and a drive, and never losing sight of a goal. And don't get me wrong, he's been hugely helped by the team and the players there, and I'm a big believer that Justin Holbrook's got a lot to say in how that team, you know, ended up doing what it did. But you know, he kind of, you know, revitalised not only the club, but I think he revitalised the town. That connection between the two, I think, which was massive, and you know, he got the boys in a good frame of mind again and enjoying the rugby. And you know, we've got to an age now and a stage where, you know, sports sciences took us so far, strength and conditioning took us so far. I genuinely believe now the best teams that have what's in between the ears. You know, if you put every single player at the start of the year onto a rugby league field and you've done a fitness test with them, a bleed test, I think pretty much everybody would you'd find a common theme of where the drop-off points were. Obviously, you always get I nearly had a choice with my words there. You always get the perhaps not as fit players and who would drop it. You get that anywhere, but I genuinely think now that with, you know, with the amount of staff and coaches and things that they have in place, it's massively between the ears, but that needs managed, and it needs facilitated and ran every single day. And when you have a guy like Christian Wolf, then, you know, it's certainly, you can understand why it worked for as long as it's worked, you know. And, you know, the beauty of it is that group's got to go and try and do it all again. So,
Patented stupid question for me, Darren, because I remember after the 2019 grand final, obviously you were in the mix zone and you were emotional because you won, but you said that, you know, St Helens that year hadn't got the credit they deserved because a lot of people were focusing on London at the bottom and their achievements in still being relegated despite winning so many games. Do you think now, 4 grand final wins in a row, this St Helens team are getting the credit they do deserve?
I think so, yeah. I think everybody recognises now that they've dominated a period in their era, if you like, their generation. And what I meant by that was that we get obsessed in sport, don't we? We try to find a story all the time. A little bit with the Rhinos there, you know, they were 11th at one point. They were almost pinching themselves, really, that they were in that grand final, if we're brutally honest. And you know, they never really, even within that game, you always felt that Saints were comfortable in it. I felt, yes, they scored that try before half time, but other than that, there's a sheer weight of possession and dominance. There was only ever really going to be one winner. But I think we sometimes look and celebrate like that almost, we want to fall in love with that. A bit like what Mike said, it's boring, isn't it? When a team just continually wins, it's boring. And we all naturally want to see, you know, we do it all in our own lives. When people achieve stuff, we get a little bit jealous or a little bit envious, and we want to see them fail at some point. You know, I think back to, you know, obviously when Andy Joshua was on the rise, you know, everybody was cheering for him, but when it got to that point, everyone wanted to see him get knocked out, didn't they? And it's the same in rugby league. So that's what I meant by that. I just meant that we got caught up in London and how well Salford had done, and yes, it is a good story, but I just think that in sport, and particularly in British sport, we seem to lose sight of excellence, which has now gone on to be proven, in my opinion, that side that's just won that final as greatness, you know. And little did I know back then that it was going to end up being that. But, you know, that year we beat a record that had stood for 124 years, I'm led to believe, you know, winning the top of the league by the most points, and what we did in that year was incredible. We were literally blowing teams away by half time and the game was done. And I just felt that it never really got the credit it deserved, but that was only my opinion.
One of the great challenges is commentating on a game where a team's going to win easily. Faye, I've done this when St Helens won at Wakefield, I think 60-odd nil a couple of years ago. Where do you see the women's team at the minute? Obviously, grand final winners 2 years ago, but this year just seemed to fade away at the end of the season.
Yeah, we had a little bit of a blip. I think it was like midway in the season. Maybe a bit too complacent. We obviously come off the back of winning the treble, and we started pre-season later compared to the year before. We'd gone in like November, even though the league had only finished in the October. But this year we started back in the January. I think girls needed a bit of a break. The England calendar was very intense from that October finishing up till January. They were training every Saturday, like 9 till 5 down at Wheatwood. So the girls needed a break, and we started really strong, and then obviously won the Challenge Cup, which was pretty mega, which was kind of a tough day because the women had won and then the men got knocked out. So it was a bit like, what do we do? We didn't really know how to feel that day. But yeah, so we started really strong, and then we just had a bit of a blip, picked up like quite a few injuries, little niggles, and then we started performing pretty well towards the back end, but just Leeds, there's always been
it's
that
always
same
Leeds.
It is, and it's been like that since the Super League started in 2018. It's always been Leeds. There's just something about them, but they never die off. They'll play to the bitter end, and unfortunately they just got the better of us in the semi-final. We obviously lost Jodie that game. She had picked up a niggle in the quarters, I think, and she wasn't ready to play, and it was touch and go whether she'd make the World Cup as well. So she's a massive loss, isn't she? She can play, 1 to 13, can't she? So every team needs one of her. But yeah, she was a huge loss. I think sometimes when our halfback struggle, Jodie really steps up as that third halfback, and I think we just really needed that in that semi-final. But yeah, and then Leeds go on to win it.
I'll upset you all by not mentioning them now, but it is a great rivalry between yourself and Leeds, and I always think it's one of those things where when we look back in 10, 15 years' time, wherever women's rugby league has gone at that point, it's going to be the thing that underpins these early days of the Women's Super, because it is such a great rivalry between two recognisable clubs.
Yeah, I think playing Wigan's always a derby. I think any Saints-Wigan derby, there's just a different feel about it. But with Leeds, I think that first year in the Super League, they beat us every single semi-final, and it was just tough to take. And then the second year when we won everything, we had a COVID year, didn't we, where we didn't play, unfortunately, and then we took everything that next year. But I love playing against Leeds. I love going to Headingley. I think how Leeds treat the women, they set up their class as performance athletes, so they get access to the Leeds doctor there, they get all the top S&C conditioning. The way they treat the women is just phenomenal, and I think a lot of clubs need to look at that and take that approach. I don't think there's any money what exchanged hands at Leeds, but they just do
there
things
isn't
well.
Gary Hetherington. I can confirm.
Yeah. They just do things really well, but playing against Leeds for me, it's just going to Headingley, I think, is always pretty special. I played an England game there, so that was pretty special. But yeah, I don't know what it is for Leeds, so hopefully, I think Courtney Winfield Hill is going back home next year, maybe for 12 months. I know a wife has just signed at Melbourne, is it? The cricket team?
She's somewhere in the big patch.
Yeah, she's quite big, isn't she, with cricket? So I think she's going to take a bit of a year out from here. Maybe she'll be one who goes NRLW, because why not? She might as well keep playing. She's on form, isn't she? So
She ever run for the Roosters?
yeah, in the
nines.
nines. Yeah, she did. And so maybe, I don't know if Leeds are going to bring through a halfback or they stick with Cudjoe. So that might be a huge loss for Leeds next year. But yeah, we've got our hopes set on 3 trophies again.
Representing England, what does that mean to you?
Oh, it's really hard to explain. I always think about it, and I just think there's no real word to. Maybe if you ask me in 10 years' time, I'll be able to see it. But I see myself going back into that squad once I'm fully fit and pushing to get that selection again. And I don't know, when I walk down the stairs in my house, there's like my England shirt and my 9 shirt when we went over to Australia, and then my Saints shirt. So it is quite special looking at your cap. But I don't know, you do it to make. I never talk about sacrifices because I think it's a choice. It was a choice of mine to play at and push at that level, and it was my family's choice to keep travelling around the country, but they just come along for the ride. So yeah, to give back to them and to have the shirts. I hope that one day my niece is 4 now and she loves Amy Hardcastle. Amy Hardcastle's like God to me. So I think in 10 years' time, if she turns around and says, like, that's my auntie, she's played for England, I think that will mean everything.
It's a daft question, but I interviewed the 3 women who are going to the Hall of Fame yesterday, and that's going up as a podcast later this week. And it's a question I have to ask because I never got anywhere near representing my country. So I've got no idea how it feels, but it obviously is a special achievement that only a few people have done. You mentioned Amy Hardcastle. She was actually mentioned by those Hall of Famers as a player they would love to have played alongside. I think she was the difference between Saints pre-winning things and not winning things and winning stuff now. How good is she? Because she looks like an absolute scary prospect on the field.
She is just the athlete everyone wants to be. Like, what she puts into it, she come from working in the NHS, she obviously works with Rugby League Curs now, and she's a mum, she's running a household, she trains like unbelievable. You watch her at Saints and you're just like, wow. But looking back to the women going into the Hall of Fame, when I was 14, I think I got Northwest Player of the Year, and Lisa McIntosh gave me my trophy, and I looked at her and I was like, oh my Lord, she is massive. I would not want her running at me, like, looking back at it. And I think that's with Amy. But the one thing about Amy, I think, off the field, she's just the nicest down-to-earth person, but on the field, when I used to play against her, when it was Statuive versus Bradford or Lancashire, Yorkshire, I just used to think, please don't come out with that hand off, because she doesn't expect like it's coming, and then the next thing, it's hit you in the face. But she's just an athlete, and I think I really hope she has a really strong World Cup. I think she's been building now. It's been 5 years, hasn't it? Because it should have been last year. So people do put the lives on hold for that, because them girls are wanting to start families, and she's just a phenomenal athlete who the girls coming through, like, I think for me, Holly Dodd will be that next Amy Hardcastle if you're looking at the shape and the size she's put on at the minute and the muscle, and she's going to be that next Amy Hardcastle for me. But Amy is just, I don't know if she'll ever retire. She was counting down the years to the next World Cup the other day, so I was a bit like, is she ever going to retire, or is she just going to be able to keep playing?
I interviewed her once, I was intimidated.
Yeah.
But that's no surprise. Mentioned playing for your country, but Kyle, representing Cumbria not too long ago, what was that? How was that as an experience?
Unbelievable. You know, that's something that I'm real passionate about. Probably haven't got enough time to go down the whole rabbit hole of Cumbria Rugby League, and for me, there should be something in place ready to go for Super League, because there's no doubt there's an enormous amount of talent up there. There's so many different reasons why at the minute it can't and won't work, but I certainly think that with the changes that are coming in the game and just the way the world is in a financial crisis that we are, I think it's only a matter of time before Whitehaven and Working have to merge together. I think it's either adapt or die. I really do think that will come at some stage, and when it does, there's probably only me that's going to be happy about that, because I genuinely think that could kickstart off something.
And Marwan Kukash.
And Marwan Kukash, yeah. And that's another rabbit hole we can go down. But no, look, all joking aside, that look, it's important that clubs have history and tradition, and we get that. And again, Mike will be able to tell you about the uproar when probably moving from Knowsley Road to where they play now. But things have to change, don't they? They just do. And that's something that the thing that encourages me. And it was only put together about 3.5 weeks ago, and the way I described it to people down here, it was like being in Papua New Guinea again. After the game, everyone's flooding the field, and they were just so happy to have pictures and selfies with all the Cumbrian team, all Jamaican team. There was Jamaican born and bred players come over who were in that team. They'd never even heard of them, and they were just happy to be at the game and stuff. So you know, I do think you think of the amount of times that, you know, when I go home, you walk around the streets and everyone's in, you know, Saints, Wigan, Leeds, NRL gear, their own amateur club. They are very tribal about their own amateur clubs. But perhaps there's been a disconnect with the towns and you know, you look at their gates and they're not great figures. They're, you know, maybe 800 average a game. But whenever a top flight game comes to town, and you know, Cumbria v Jamaica, a lot of people could argue we'd only two of the super, because it was so late thrown together. There wasn't really, a lot of the lads had gone away on holiday or they'd had operations booked in or whatever. There wasn't really a great depth of, there was only myself and Brad Singleton who could come and play, but you know, put together with a Jamaican side that was, again, it only hits 2 Super League contingent there and the rest Championship and League One, and for them to turn out like they did was incredible. And you go back again to, you know, when we played up at Whitehaven, a fantastic day, wasn't it? You know, everybody loved it, all in good spirit. You know, again, you go further back, you know, when Scotland played New Zealand that night, and so the appetite for what I'm trying to say is it's there. So, you know, if you can attract 6,000 and 5,000 at games, it's a lot more than some Super League clubs are getting at the moment, isn't it? But, you know, it needs people far more clever than me to put their heads together and come up with something. But I do believe the first big obstacle is that merger, and I think it has to happen, and I believe it will happen. It's just a case of when.
Does it have to happen though? Could you not have an overarching Cumbrian team with
Category 1 licence,
Workington and Whitehaven as feeder clubs to maintain that?
I don't think so.
Would the younger generation follow a Cumbrian Super League team?
100%. They're getting the dads to drive them down to watch Wigan.
So could you not keep the original 2 as the props for it?
I don't know. I don't know if that would be sustainable. Do you know? I think the first thing for me is if they're going to merge and you know, we're heading into an era now of licensing again that's going to be independently by, you know, IMG and not Super League like it was last time. That they've got time now to put a plan together, and whether that's a stadium and whether it's what they do in Australia, where they play half the home games in Workington and half the home games in Whitehaven, just so, you know, you do the quick maths. You know, if you're only getting 800 for, say, 10 games a year, that's 8,000 through your gate. You bring Leeds or Saints, and you smashed your gate already, and you've still got all the other home fixtures. Do you know what I'm saying? So, there is ways and means around it, but it just has to be well thought through, and it has to be a long-term thing. Nothing's a quick fix in rugby league, because the amount of times that has happened, we've seen how very quickly it's when something's too good to be true, it genuinely is in our game, innit? And that's not being negative, that's just what history has told us. So it has to be well thought through, and it has to be planned, and it has to be executed properly. But I do, to answer your question, I really believe that, you know, that there is something up there, and for me to captain that side once again, it was 11 years since the last time I captained them, and to do it again, and yeah, it was incredibly proud, and you know, I had all my mates and my family and that in the crowd, and yeah, just special. I played in the amateur game till I was 20-year-old up there, so I've kind of been through each level now, and you know, it's I think that's something that probably helps in my favour up there, that you know, that there's lads still at 18, 19-year-old who haven't been picked up, and kind of shown them that there is a way. You know, it's tough, and the odds are against you, but it can be done.
I don't mention Origin or county championships or things. Don't IMG to bring that back.
It is interesting though, because Balmain and West and St George and Illawarra, they do compete at a lower tier, and basically what IMG are looking to do is pull up the drawbridge so that you can't go up to Super League from Championship or League One, and so therefore surely it is possible to have, you know, the two teams, if there's enough finance, competing in the lower tiers at the same time. And suddenly, I've been saying it about London. London loses all its good players, but if London were competing in more than one division, that'd be hard, you know. And there's economies of scale with using the same facilities. Then they can hold on to players better.
I just think we've got to be realistic though, where we are as a sport. I don't think there's not this well of cash, is there? You know, it's a hand-to-mouth game. Let's be honest. So I think to go from successfully running 2 sides than to ask 3, it's not achievable.
Maybe one of those brands survives in a lower division, one doesn't. You know, I don't know.
Does Barrow come into the equation? Because they seem to be very, very progressive.
Yeah,
I don't know the South Cumbria, but
yeah, no, I just think that logistically, geographically as well, it just doesn't work, does it? I think it's like asking Saints to merge with Leeds. That's the equivalent of it. It's just not going to happen. In fact,
There's
it's
a
quicker.
super
Could play at Huddersfield.
It's quicker to get from Barrow to Wigan than it is from Barrow to Whitehaven. So it just doesn't make sense. For me, it has to be a West Cumbrian franchise, and perhaps Barrow could be that team, like you mentioned, that operates at Cumbria. Whether that how that music goes down to them, I don't know. But because they are striving towards Super League, that's what they're saying. But genuinely, when one of the Cumbrian Super League sides does well, the other two really struggle, and it kind of goes round in cycles, and it'll do that again. If we don't change, it may be Barrow will end up going to a place where they can't see a way out of it, and then some money gets pulled out, and then Whitehaven will come good again, and it'll just keep going round like that. They're all fishing out the same pond as well. If talent wise, they're all. And I was speaking to Chris Thorman before he got sacked, that right at the end, a lot of these teams have already done their recruitment because they know they're in the Championship, where a lot of the guys in relegation or the guys looking for promotion, their net's really, really small, isn't it? Because they can only go and, you ain't going to go and sign a contract where you might be playing Championship or you might not, So they miss out on an awful lot of players, and then when they do get that, that green light that they're in the Championship, well, they're all sort of competing over the same sort of local amateurs as well, so it's very difficult. It's very messy as well, but I think it can be sorted out, and I genuinely believe that it will, and some people will call me a bit mad for thinking that, but I do think it will happen.
See, Barrow and Carlisle merged.
Did
Yeah.
They're doing it.
Well, they just swallowed
Didn't
them.
work.
They just swallowed them.
Same as Hull and Newcastle.
Yeah.
Well, yeah.
Huddersfield, Sheffield.
Well, there you go, and for those reasons, it's already shown that it doesn't work,
I suppose Workington and Whitehaven, they're two equal partners, aren't they? As long as one's not gobbling the other one up, you've got...
Well, interestingly, I was at the game, obviously, and afterwards we were doing the hospitality thing, and it was the first time that I'd heard the board of Workington actually admit that a merger is something that's on the cards. They actually told the room, they called it the dreaded M word, but they said that is something that could realistically happen. So they're admitting it now.
What was the reaction in the room?
Nothing. They'd all just watched them.
They'd all fainted.
They'd all just watched the Cumbria. Look, I don't believe that. I don't. This whole thing about the rivalry that there's not. Again, there's only 800 people going. How many people are you really annoying? do you know what I mean? You're annoying 800 people, but to then see a pitch invasion with 3,500 kids on the field all smiling, where's the win there? I know where it is.
Like Wigan and Springfield Borough. Why did anyone think Springfield Borough would be a success?
What about Rochdale changing the name to Manchester?
Greater Manchester. Yeah.
And again, you're annoying 800 people, but they still didn't have the nerve to do it.
Well, fortune favours the brave, doesn't it?
Yeah.
Are you pleased how you've already touched on the Lee Leppens?
It's great, isn't it?
We want to hear your opinion, though.
Oh, I've spoke to Phil in the car on the way over. And
Disbelief?
I think it's awful. It's an awful name.
Derek could be banning you now.
Oh,
be careful.
Yeah, whatever. But it's from going from Centurion, like that's got a bit of beef behind it. It's got identity, hasn't it, as well? And I don't know. I don't know why. Yeah, it's very Americanised, isn't it?
Saints dodged the bullet, didn't they? By having a recognisable nickname already with the town name that they didn't have to have some kind of daft thing after it.
They still could have done one if they were wanted to.
What would it be?
I
Salamanders.
wonder if that's been any advice from IMG or anything like that. I wonder if they've been advised by anyone.
Well, everyone's trying to rebrand themselves, so it means we're worthy of a Category 1 licence, because we're not what we used to be, But it's just changing a name, isn't it? It's just moving the deck chairs on the Titanic.
I think it's interesting that Halifax have got a new board, and there's been
going
some
back to Blue Sox.
And it's interesting that London are clearly working harder to have a better organisation behind the team, and are going to try and make a go of Wimbledon as a venue. So I think they are certain. York have changed their identity.
I get that though with London and York, because the cities, you know what I mean, the big cities, and they've got an awful lot of people to try to connect with. But with Leigh, it's a little town. I don't even think it's got a train station, has it?
No.
So, like, it's just, I don't know why I'd mentioned that, but...
Because you have to mention it when you talk about league.
But what I'm saying is, it's so...
It certainly has no leopards.
Well, exactly. It's so small that I personally think that the people of Lille will be insulted by the fact that that name's been took off. I think so. I haven't seen any reaction or read anything like, but I think it's...
Maybe it'll make them realise how the degree to which they're at the mercy of an individual. And that, and it actually, maybe they don't notice when the money comes, and then it goes, then it comes, then it goes. But now they'll notice now because they just changed the name on a whim.
But look, for whatever we think about Derek Beaumont, he's assembling a pretty decent side there, isn't he? I think that side's much more prepared and equipped for this tilted Super League than it's ever been before.
I thought you were going to say them Wakefield, and he was going to cry.
Well, if we're going to throw it out there, I think Wakefield could be really nervous about next year.
We're getting a new stand though, so that's a positive.
Although we've said this about Wakefield for 20 years, haven't we?
Like cockroaches. Wakefield Trinity cockroaches.
Yeah, but it's but Lee, they've smartly done that, haven't they? They've changed the name and said, right, here's 10 players, get over it.
I think again going into Super League for the third time, and the two previous attempts were, with the greatest respect to the players that played for them, disastrous.
Yep.
Maybe they're saying not only have we got a new team, but it's a different league to the one that's been up before. So take us seriously.
Maybe
it could be that.
But he certainly put his money where his mouth is as well, isn't he? And for that, you have to applaud in our game. If someone's willing to spend their own money and try and grow a club and enhance a competition, then we can't be all sitting here thinking what we think about Derek Beaumont, because for me he's obviously done a fantastic job, and he's very, very, very heavily invested in League. There's no doubt about that, is there? He loves that club.
When you said he might be banned, I think he might have started to worry.
So, he might ban me for next year. Yeah, what we doing if we get him in the cup?
I guess how are you going to get him when you're at Widnes and they won't let you in?
Widnes, yeah.
It's not good, is it? Sorry, League got been promoted. I've forgotten already. Never seen a leopard in League. Never seen a rhino in Leeds.
A wolf.
Don't even talk about cougars and keys.
Derek Beaumont actually wears a top, which actually does have leopard.
Yeah,
that's what. I think that's what he's planning on merchandising now.
What does Eamon McManus wear? Just suits and ties.
Mel B wore leopard print as well. Yeah.
She's a Leeds fan.
Just saying.
Just saying.
Shall we get back to the World Cup? Or?
Sorry.
Is there a Leopards international rugby league team named the Leopards?
Nigeria.
Probably France, wasn't it?
Nigeria.
Was there a French team?
Oh, Villeneuve, yeah. Villeneuve.
I remember there was actually an argument about leopards because one of the South American teams told the other South American team, you can't call yourself leopards because we're already called leopards. I think there was actually a bit of a bitch fight over the name.
Don't worry, North Leeds Leopards will be suing Derek Beaumont later this week.
Yeah. There's definitely there are leopards. There's also the non-existent Afghanistan snow leopards. You can buy some merch, but they don't actually exist.
Yeah. Our badge is better. Look at that. But
like Nicaragua or Peru or something like that are called leopards. And there's two, and they don't like each other.
They're not in the World Cup.
No.
But Brazil are.
Yes.
The Women's World
Amazonas.
Cup. Yeah, the Women's World Cup. Well, the Brazil has that. The Women's World Cup is coming. Faye, who's going to win?
Can.
Oh. No. I know.
I just think the way the NRLW is, the way the majority of the girls are professional athletes now, they get to train at the clubs, 5-6 times a week. I just think they're the number one team in the world for a reason. They triumphed in the 2017, they were phenomenal. Again in 2013, I just think if you look at it, the odds are with Australia. I think there might be a few surprises. Papua New Guinea were outstanding last time we faced them over as England. They beat us in the final test, which was shown on the BBC. So I think you can't write off Papua New Guinea either. A few of the girls are playing in the NRLW as well. So
what about the Ferns? They're obviously second favourites, but I mean, how far behind are they, do you think, the Aussies?
Well, I think a lot of the Ferns play in the NRLW. Yeah. So you've got Racine McGregor. She's just won the Deli M, so she is a phenomenal halfback. So she's over at the Ferns. I don't think they're actually too far. You've got
because they won the nines, didn't they? They won the nines. Yeah.
You've got Roxy Murdoch, who obviously went back home with Ben, and then she's been selected now for Kiwi Fern. She trained with England for, I think it was 2 years while she was over here, and for her to be selected there, I was speaking to her the other day, and she's just like, I can't wait to get back over and play for the Kiwi. So I don't think they're too far behind. They're just drawn in the same pool, aren't they? So they're in Group B, but you expect both of them to qualify for
Because
the
my recollection is that New Zealand Rugby League embraced women's rugby league right from the beginning, and in Australia it was kept at arm's length. You know, it was separate. The ARL weren't really involved. There was a separate organisation, and then I think the same thing happened with wheelchair. You know, that the French and here embraced it much more quickly than the Australians did, and they're slow to change. You know,
As you mentioned, wheelchair. Kyle Amor, who is one of the top broadcasters of this, alongside Mark Will's never heard of him, but tell the people who've never seen it. It's bloody amazing, isn't it?
Yeah, it really is. And I think the best part about it is if you get to go to a game and you get to watch it live, you come away with it with a bit more appreciation as well, because you hear the noise, you hear the chat, you hear the collisions. It's incredible, but I just think for me, you know, the reason I like it the most, it might sound a bit cheesy this, but it's true, you know. I just think that, you know, I've got children of my own as well, and I just think if you were a kid that was, you know, that was born with a disability or something happened in your life where you couldn't then participate in sport, I know how much it gives me and my children, you know, the gains that come off being involved in sport. And for some of these kids, they would have never have had that. They'd have to just sit in a chair, or if they weren't able to join in or whatever, and they've had to sit and watch, you know, siblings or friends play sport and get all that, and just watch from a distance, wondering what it would be like. Well, now through the terrific work that the guys have been doing behind the scenes to get it on BBC and Sky, these guys now can go on and be their heroes, can't they? You know, they can, and they wear the same shirt as the England players, they wear the same shirt as the Rhinos or the Wigan Warriors or Halifax or whoever, and they're able to go and sort of be someone, you know, rather than, you know, perhaps where they just had to just watch. And I think it's incredibly powerful as well. I think the fact that it's the most inclusive and diverse game on the planet, you know, is something else that we should celebrate as well. You know, you've got so many terrific stories in there. You know, the guy who's Phil Roberts, he's a coach of Wigan Warriors. He coached his son and their team right from when they were kids, from his wheelchair, and he'd never be able to play with him ever, but he can now. You know, and that's something that them two have. There's a guy called Jack Brown. I've yet to see this guy play, but I've heard so much about him, and he came over actually just to sort of paint a picture. There was the Rhinos against Halifax in that grand final was decided by 4 points. I think it was really close again, wasn't it? And that's the fourth time they'd met. But the three earlier times, the three previous times, twice it came down to within a try. But when this Jack Brown came over while he was training for England and played, they won by 30 points. So he really is that good, and I can't wait to see him. Really, someone who can be that impactful on a game. And I've heard so much about him. But his story was his brother, I'm led to believe, was born with a disability right from when he was born, and so his brother got in a chair and made sure that every time they were doing things, they were doing it together in the chair, and he almost mastered that through those sort of, you know, through those skills that he picked up as a kid to become the best player in the world. But he did that out of love for his brother, to make sure that, yeah, I just think the stories like that.
There's a father and son in the Australian team.
Yeah.
There's a father and son, and the father had an accident, and the son played able-bodied rugby league, and his father convinced him to come and play wheelchair, and they're going to play together at the World Cup.
Yeah, there's, you know, two of the best players in the world, Nico and Gilles Clausel, two French guys, uncle and nephew. Same thing, one of them had an accident and now they're able to play together, and, you know, I think Gilles about, you know, I think he's older than God's dog, but he's still playing, you know. He's, and again, it doesn't discriminate against it. You know, we get to the, you know, in the running game where you get to an age and your time's up, it's a meat market. But in a wheelchair game, you get to play for so much longer, and I just think it's something we should all celebrate, and I think it caters for that many different people that, you know, the power of sport's there to be seen in bucket loads, and I think that's something that we have to and must celebrate.
The regular listeners know I've said this before, but when people see it for the first time on BBC Two during this World Cup, I think it's really going to take off massively because it's something that people, they won't know what to expect, but when they see it, they'll just go, what the hell is going on here?
Well, for people maybe listening now, you know, apart from the odd little rule, 98% of it is rugby league. It's just in a wheelchair, you know, and because of the size of the court, it's so.
I don't need to get in trouble by
Sorry,
from
the
Martin
pitch.
Coyne.
Sorry, the pitch. Sorry,
You might be watching.
because of the size of the pitch, it's end to end. It's non-stop. And when you get to call it, it's so much easier than calling, you know, a men or a women's game, because it's just end to end. There's normally a 15 tries scored in a game, so there's never a dull moment in there. It's brilliant.
Are you going to transition then from the running game to the wheelchair?
I'm too busy at the minute. No, I've not got time for that. But no, I was talking to Jamie Jones Buchanan about it, and I think we covered an international game mid-season with England and France in the wheelchair game, and he was joking alongside with Joe Simpson and saying that he was going to come and win the grand final for the Rhinos, so you can win grand finals with running game and wheelchair. So yeah, but no, brilliant stuff.
And England might win that World Cup as well, which is excellent. Got to beat the French. The French in the final. What time are we on? 7:10. Who's going to win the Men's World Cup? Kyle Amor.
Great question. It's hard now, isn't it? 'Cause it's all being blown wide open, isn't it? You know, even when
the key question is how your opinion on that has changed.
Well,
You know.
I was leaning towards, you know, Australia with Tonga as perhaps an outside chance. Those were the two that I was sort of looking at. But obviously the way Tonga performed the other night, you know, I think Papua New Guinea could perhaps, you know, if England weren't right on the night, you know, there's enough evidence there to be shown that they can pick and pull people apart, you know, and yeah, but I just thought the way England performed, and I just think the backing of a whole nation, yeah, I'm gonna stick my neck on the line and think England they're gonna get it done.
I'm not going to ask Stephen Phil because I've asked them how many panels now, Phil?
I don't think you've asked me that question.
Oh, no. I'll ask you in a minute. I'll ask Mike first.
I have a feeling. I mean, I know Australia are technically weakened by players who've lost, but when they come in '82 and they had all these unknowns and they turned out to be invincible, I just have that feeling about them once they click. And the only unfortunate bit for me is we're only going to play them in the final. That's my one beef about the World Cup, that when we've got to get to the final to play them, or they've got to get to the final and play us. Because in the past they've always diddled the draw, so we play them in the group stage. So at least
More diddling.
At least we're guaranteed to play
Prince
them.
Harry could not have fixed the draw. That would have been terrible.
No, but I just think, I mean, and this is what's good about the World Cup, isn't it? We're going to see Tedesco and Keely and, you know, these sort of players on our soil playing against our guys, and you know, that's why I hope we do get to the final and play them. And I do want to play Australia in the final, you know, because I want to see them in this World Cup.
But that's
Well,
also...
if you're going to win it, you know, if you beat Australia in the final, well, that's just the cherry on top of the cake, isn't it? That, you know, there'd be no qualms about anything then, would there? You know, it'd be what a way to win it.
But it would be brilliant if we won it, though. I'm not being for 50 years, you know. I was looking at that team from '72, and that was a couple of St Helens lads in there and whatnot, or future St Helens players in there. But it seems like an absolute lifetime ago, doesn't it?
But it's also why we need to have an international calendar so that we know when nations are playing each other next. Because what would be great is if we knew there was a Kangaroos tour coming over here next year and the first test was being played in Newcastle. So it's all very well having the magic weekend, and it's a dying concept. So they had to get the fixtures out and tickets on sale. But if we knew that those people coming out of that ground, that we were told today 55% of the people at Newcastle were from the northeast. Yeah. If that's right, and there's no reason to think that it isn't, if you could then say to them, come back in a year's time and watch us play Australia, even if we only play them once in this tournament, the appetite will be massive.
We need the Ashes series back set in stone.
We need Greece to be playing, and we need Jamaica to be playing, and we need to know that before this. You know, we need to know where the 2029 World Cup's going to be.
I know, but the Ashes was something that we had that Rugby Union didn't have. It was something that wasn't cricket shirt, that had real value to, and you knew when we won the Ashes, like, you know, it was one of them things, and we just gave it away. You know, I know it should have been played during COVID.
Gave away the the term Lions too. Like Rugby Union had to license it back to Rugby League in 2019, so they didn't copyright it, you know. But actually, one thing that sort of suggests to me, Phil, is also that the England team could be used to market Rugby League in other parts of the country the way the club game can't. And when I say market, I don't mean just sell a jersey people watch on TV. But if you could send England back into cities over and over again. I mean, the first Kangaroos played their tests in Newcastle at St James's Park in 1908. They played in Birmingham and they played in London. That's where the 3 tests were in 1908. So when you say Rugby League has failed to expand, it's actually shrunk. You know,
the old goals were in Cheltenham. You know, the original Test series was decided in Cheltenham.
In Cheltenham, yeah.
I mean, the other thing about Ireland, which I think we haven't spoken enough about because so many things to talk about. Got somebody here who knows what it means to play for Ireland. If Ireland, as they currently are set up, played England in a Test match in Dublin, that would get 10,000 people. I'm sure it would.
Yeah, they get good publicity.
Yeah, you'd think so, wouldn't you? And I know they are doing. They're developing their own leagues out in Ireland now, aren't they? Which is good. The challenge is, though, isn't it? Is how many of them realistically fit into an elitist world competition? You know that, and the longer that they can keep doing good work like that out there, then the better, really. But you know, I do think it's time that that a game of rugby league was took over to Dublin, a big game. I mean, you know, it's only over the water. It's no different to going to.
It's cheaper and easier to get
Catalan,
to,
isn't it?
Driving down the M62.
I just think, even if England was to play, well, mind you, I don't know if it would sell England France in Dublin. I don't know. But
England, Ireland, and if this Ireland team that's currently playing,
but again, they've
it's watchable.
They've gone with a younger side, but a younger side that's already well established in Super League, and the stuff they played at the weekend. Granted it was Jamaica and they a bit inexperienced and whatnot. There'll be a cracking game that though this weekend, Ireland Lebanon. That's a real good game. It's a shootout for second place, but potentially a quarter final against Australia.
Carl, what was the story with you and Ireland for this World Cup? Was there discussions?
Oh yeah. No, look, I was going into. I got offered a job in teaching. I've started that, so I had to look ahead and ring the coach and ask him, look, am I going to be able to play in a World Cup? And he couldn't give me that answer yet because he had to announce a 40-man squad and then go down to 24 and I just couldn't wait. Do you know what I mean? I couldn't. I had a job lined up that was me transitioning off the field into something else, and look, while it would have been great to be a part of it, I have to be sensible and think about my wife and children. So I had to just take that job opportunity there, and I'm glad I did that now as well. So yeah.
So who's going to win the World Cup? The men's World Cup?
Before the weekend, I would have said New Zealand, and now I would say maybe Australia by an extra time drop goal over England. I don't know. If Joey Manu had there's nothing wrong with the Kiwi side or whatever, but if Joey Manu hadn't played, it would have been a lot tighter the other night. Particularly if Adam, as he wants to be called, Dwayne, wasn't sent off. So, and I thought the Aussies just looked like they had something in reserve. Harry Grant looked great off the bench. I thought England were fantastic, and England are definitely the form side of the tournament so far. There's no doubt about that. But I see a lot of improvement in the Aussie side.
Yeah. The only thing with England is I hope they haven't played the race card straight away. That's the only thing. Are they able to replicate? Because they were good, weren't they? In terms of they were picking off short. All the tries were a real mix. Wellesby. Williams were sensational. Callum Watkins, how good did he look as well? It was great to see him back in that form. I thought Sam Tompkins as well, that gave him the fact that how well Jack and George were playing, it almost freed him up to do stuff that we all know he can do as well. I thought they were brilliant, but I do they're going into France and Greece are dropping in intensity, isn't it? Compared to that atmosphere and that expectation on them. And look, I've no doubt they'll get up for a huge game again, but it's very difficult to, jump from one end of the scale to the other.
It's like we talked, I think, the other day about aura and stuff, and the way the Aussies always used to. That Test series at the start of the century when they won every game in the last, whether they still have that. It can't last forever. That magic can't last forever. So this could be the tournament where their luck runs out. If it's tight.
They're not ranked fourth for nothing.
Back in Australia, are they really stung by the fact that people have chose not to play for Australia this time? Does that really hit home?
No, this is a really interesting subject I don't think I've got time to go into, but the Australian team is kind of like, it lacks a certain identity at home. People don't go, if there's very few people you meet who go, who's your favourite team? The Australian Rugby League team. It's like, it's just everyone, they follow their club, they follow New South Wales or Queensland, and then in international sport they follow the Wallabies or the Socceroos or the Boomers. And then so the Australian Rugby League team is kind of like who's left, you know what I mean? And that kind of rubs off on the players who have different backgrounds and eligible for different countries. There's no kind of, as there used to be when we used to sit up late at night and watch Rex Mossop and Barry Ross call Kangaroo Tours. That isn't there now because they don't play for commercial reasons. So the kids are going. The kids lack that kind of that instinct to. I always wanted to play for Australia. If they're eligible for Samoa or Tonga, Papua New Guinea, whatever, and they can make their parents proud. International Rugby League means more to immigrant communities in Australia than it means to people who are Anglo-Saxons. International Rugby League means a lot more to immigrant communities than it means to Anglo-Saxons. The Australian team has a kind of vanilla visage to it. It's kind of like, it's always been there, and it's, you know what I mean? And that's because they don't play. They've kind of made a rod for their own backs a little bit. So it doesn't really, it stings a certain conservative, middle-aged white male who says that they're Australian and they should play for Australia. Or if you can't play for Queensland in another country, how can you be both? Well, we live in a different world now where people's sense of identity, we used to be, our identity used to be mono. We used to consider ourselves to be one thing. And people today don't. They consider themselves to be many different things. So it annoys a certain demographic, in answer to your question, Mike. Most of them are on Fox.
The same people who don't like Victor Radley, that kind of thing.
They like the fact he did that.
See what you did there.
Yeah, sorry, So I don't know how. The great question to ask Mal Meninga is how you're culturally sensitive and you're new age and you're cognizant of all these new pressures, but you still try to restore the prestige of the team and try to make it something that more aspire to. You know what I mean? I don't know how you do that, but that's Mal's assignment.
I think I'm more scared of Amy Hardcastle than Mal Meninga, so I might ask him next time I get a chance. Who's doing the Men's World Cup, Faye? Before I ask you an even more important question.
I think I was like Kyle from the opener. I was like, is it going to be Samoa? Is it going to be? I couldn't really put it. But actually watching the lads play, I think it's been 5 years for England. That build up last year when you got that call to say the World Cup's cancelled, and from a woman's point of view, that all the girls were gutted. So I imagine the guys were too. But I think it's a home World Cup. You've got the fans, you've got everyone behind you. I think I've seen a lot on social media a lot on Twitter about actually let's back the lads now, and people written them off. So for me, I will back the lads to win the World Cup.
Is anyone off to Bolton on? Well, you might be going to another game this week. Are you going? Anyone going to Bolton on Saturday? One person. Will you be booing Sam Tompkins when they read his name out like they did in Newcastle? That's okay. The question I was going to ask you, Faye, because you're a halfback and you speak well and you've been on the radio and the telly and stuff. Why is so many props on telly? He's on telly. Danica's on telly. Barry and Tez, they're props.
You were kicked out of the props union for speaking well.
I thought prop folks didn't have brains. What's it all about?
I don't know. Well, to be fair, when players get interviewed after a game, I always think, oh gosh, I don't know how they're going to speak. Sometimes when your adrenaline's everywhere, but then sometimes I listen to interviews, I laugh with Mark Percival all the time. I know Mark quite well, and he's like, I hate it when I get chosen to do an interview, and I'm like, yeah, I'm not surprised. But no, it's good to see a range of different positions. It's not on TV. I think Kyle's really done a lot for the women's sport this year, especially. We've been on, well, BBC was pretty mega, wasn't it, for the Challenge Cup final, and then getting Sky for the grand final, and a lot of stuff covered by our league and stuff with the RFL. So I think he's really spoke well for the girls, and it takes a lot of work to research it, especially when a lot of the clubs' websites aren't up to date and the stats aren't there. It's really hard. You sit and scroll through Twitter for hours to look at who actually scored in that game. So yeah, I know the girls at Saints absolutely love it when he's on, and he speaks really good of the Saints girls anyway. We look quite good when he's on, but yeah, no, like honestly, the girls thank you quite a lot, because the women's game, there's not many people who knew quite a lot about him, so I know him, like Sharon as well and Dave Woods, they've done a lot for the women's game to help it grow.
So why with all these prop signs, Louis McCarthy's cars but not part of the WC?
That was going to be my last question.
Well, he can't.
Swears to
String
me.
2 sentences.
Well, he can. It's just you've got to have a bleep.
No, believe me, he can't. No, he's look.
You're talking about one of our
deliberately after
He's in a magazine.
No, honestly, look, I've been around when he's been around my house when my wife's grandma's down. He doesn't care. Do you know what I mean? It's not that he doesn't care. It's just that's who he is. You know, you meet his mum and dad,
Correct.
and they're the same, aren't they? You know, so it's just but he is honestly hands down. He's in the top 3 blokes that I've ever been around. You know, in the game, he's that good of a bloke. Like, you know, he really is fine. I couldn't speak highly enough of Big Louis.
No, you can't speak lowly enough of him, because the people need to know the truth.
No. Well, Dave, you know him as well, don't you? So yeah.
He's been a columnist right since the very beginning in our magazine.
Was he?
Mm.
How many swear words do you edit out every month?
That's all he gives me.
Does he type swear words?
He won't type it with his wife that types.
No,
He's
neither.
not clever enough
I'll
to
ring
type.
him. I'll ring him and then take out everything that we can't say.
Right, yeah. Sounds about right.
As we are, 7:25, or these things fly by. Should we ask the audience? I mean, tonight's question time will be a belter, won't it? I mean, everyone's going to tune into that. Chaos everywhere. So, any questions from the audience? Go on.
Can I ask Faye, what happened to Shani?
It's quite tough, really. Obviously, she's been in the setup since the 2017. Yes. When did the last World Cup? 2017. Yeah, so she come into the 2017 World Cup. She was brought in, drafted quite late. Someone got dropped out, and she come in. She's been in the setup since, and there's nothing. There's not a fallout. There's nothing like that. She just unfortunately wasn't selected. I think the other props selected, they're showing a bit more in the strengths than Shani. Not in my opinion. In my opinion, I'd have Shani in a World Cup squad. She's an 80-minute middle, and she defends like a trooper. I was saying before, wasn't I? Like, I personally think they'll miss someone aggressive like her. She's quite a heart at St Helens, and she's a good character to be around. And it's been difficult for her. It's been quite sad for her. She's really struggled, and I think for me, I just think England could have done better with how they handled it, and afterwards, like. We talk about mental health a lot in Rugby League. We have Rugby League Curse, State of Mind. We talk about it from a Saints point of view. The chaplain at Saints in Suze is phenomenal, and she's checked in with Shani quite a lot. But from an England point of view, since she got the phone call to say she wasn't selected, she's not been spoken to since. And I just think we've got to do better for our girls. And there's quite a few Saints girls who missed out. I think there was 3, potentially 4. But we've just got to do better with all the girls who weren't selected and checking on them. And do you know what? She's still out training 4 nights a week. She rings to go for a run with me, and she's still training in a way, not hoping someone drops out, but if there's an injury, hoping that she'd be the first one to be called. And it's been tough for her. She's looking forward to obviously the next season starting, and she will aim for that next World Cup, but just unfortunately wasn't selected. And I guess some people, not everyone can be selected, can they? There can only be that 24 player squad, but yeah,
I think it just shows though where the game's got to, right? Because we've now got quality players who can't make the squad, and I think that's something we have to celebrate. While it is unfortunate for Shani, don't get me wrong. They've got a job to go into this World Cup with who they believe is the best best to win a World Cup. So, as cutthroat as it is, well, this is where if the game is going to progress as it should, and more teams and more players come through. Sport is ruthless, and it is, and a part of that is being able to handle the disappointment and the setbacks, and it's unfortunate for Shani, but she should use that. My advice would be use that to come back stronger and show them next time round that it's. But it is, that's just sport for you. It's tough at times.
It was. But there was no fallout, nothing like that. She just wasn't selected, and I'm sure if you bump into her or head down to a Saints game, she'll tell you the same. But yeah, she has used it a bit of motivation. She's playing in the Knights game. The Knights are playing Cook Islands in a warm-up game next week, so she had a call to go and play in that. And as an experienced player coming, I guess I don't ever see the Knights as a step down me. I think you represent England, don't you, regardless if you're playing in the Knights or the women. So she's took that opportunity and she's going to feature for the Knights next week. But yeah, she's used it a bit of... It's hard to take. For the first, I think, 6 days, she was probably uncontactable. You couldn't get hold of her. But now I think she's turned it on its head and she's gone, actually, I am going to feature for the Knights and maybe show them what they've missed out on, and then head back with Saints next year and hopefully get that next World Cup selection.
Yes.
I was going to ask a question about wheelchair rugby league and Saints, because Saints, as a top Super League side, are conspicuously absent from wheelchair rugby, and I was wondering, rugby league I should say, I was wondering whether there are any plans around sometimes the former teams or this. I'm looking at Mike.
I can ask though. The first question on Monday. No, honestly, I will, because there are sort of holes. I mean, you look at some clubs who are strong in other aspects of the game. I mean, Warrington are very good at other aspects of the game that we're not. But yeah, no, I'll certainly ask a question.
Because I heard Evan McManus's interview on a BBC podcast the other day, and he was talking about the World Cup and he kept talking about the men's and the women's game, but I think he referred to the wheelchair game, the disabled rugby league, and he just didn't. I don't know whether there's a lack of interest there or not, but it was conspicuous the way that he sort of mentioned it.
I think it's interesting with these IMG proposals, which you could spend an hour and a half talking about, but we do need a bit more of the detail filled in about what constitutes a category. I think that'll be the next thing that they release. But the indication is that one of them is you've got to be a whole club. So you've got to have a first team men and a first team women and a PDRL and an LDRL and a wheelchair and a foundation that gets out to the community and a front office that's more than 2 people. And I think it will, even though Saints will clearly get whatever a category A is, there are areas within what will be determined as their bid that would be lacking. And I think even those teams will be dragged to have that kind of part of their club to maintain their category A status. So I think it will come. I think it'll have to come. In some respects, it's how you do it. So the Wigan team was the Leyland side of the year before. It was almost a bit like Thatto Heath, in effect, became the Saints women. I'm not sure there is a wheelchair team at the moment around here. But you look at Sheffield, for example, who are trying to, again, get a higher B grading than perhaps they would get if they were given it today. They've gone really big on women's and wheelchair. And they might not be winning any games at the moment, but they're starting literally from scratch, pulling people in, getting a few... There's been a couple of players down from Leeds to Wakefield there looking to start a wheelchair team. I think it's just, have you got the community foundation that can go out there and do it? And if you have, it doesn't take a lot to put that under the brand. And I think Wigan did a PR thing, it might have been at Christmas last year, I know Leeds have done it, where you get all sectors of the club in a big photograph or training together for a day down at Robin Park, and suddenly you're a lot bigger than you were when you had the sum of the parts. The whole is bigger. I'd be very surprised if Saints didn't go down that road, particularly on the back of a World Cup, and that's World Cup legacy, isn't it?
The thing is, it comes down to cost as well. You know, this team's got to, you know, that's the elephant in the room. You know. So
well, it does, but I mean, I can talk from.
I completely agree with you. We will get to a stage where these clubs will have them, but right now, I think while the option is not to run them, if there's not the players there, then they ain't going to go spending money in that. And I think Faye touched on it a little bit earlier. Even within the women's game now, there's an awful lot of clubs who really back their women's team.
Yeah.
And there's clubs that perceive to back their women's team, but don't actually really back the women's team.
But I think that'll change as a result of this World Cup and the proposals. I think the thing about wheelchair is that's why you do it through your charitable foundation, because the cost is negligible. It starts at a community level, and all you've really got to finance are the chairs. Those chairs, there are sponsors out there at the moment looking...
Take out the pot there.
The top ones are, but not the ones that you would start off. But there are sponsorships out there from legal and financial firms who don't normally invest in rugby league but want to be part of their corporate social responsibility, that will say, tell me what your wheelchair team need. If it's $5,000 for a set of chairs, we'd rather have our name associated with that than be a ball sponsor for your men's running team. So I think the money, I think Steve's written about it before, that's how you change the perception of your sport. You go out with the women's and the wheelchair as your low-hanging fruit, and then if you can drag somebody into the men's running game, that's fine. But I think wheelchair on the back of the World Cup, and people seeing it on BBC Two, and the stories that you'll be telling about the players that are playing it, exponentially that can be probably the quickest growth area, along with the women's game. So I think I'd be very surprised if Saints don't see the value of it.
I hope Leeds didn't trust me in a £10,000 chair.
No, you didn't go anywhere near a £10,000 chair.
Any more? Yes.
Yeah, on the back of the exposure we're getting now with the World Cup, of all the games, do you think that it will be able to exploit the broadcasters more for a celestial offer, the Super League?
Well, I don't know, because right now it's, as Sky do an awful lot for the game, don't they? They're the ones who put the money in, and at the minute, I don't think Channel 4 pay anything, do they, towards the game? So, that lack, the drop in the TV deal last time round has led for scope for these games to be picked up by the likes of Channel 4. So, obviously, within the TV deal, there's got to be conversations had in and around that, because I think Channel 4, I think we can all agree, has been quite a good success, and I think a lot of fans have enjoyed it, but it's whether Channel 4 want to pay for it for a start. They might not. So it'll be interesting to see. But in terms of getting broadcasting rights, well, obviously, Sky still is the main power, and that's something that we have to recognise and still applaud them for.
I was just thinking, if you talked earlier about chasing the same talents, the pool's not big enough, is it? We know the pool's not big enough for kids coming through. And there's some great stuff going on in the community clubs, isn't there? What we do at That's All, with the girls' game.
Yep.
That's all fantastic, but it's not replicated, or whatever, it's not replicated, but it's not in the Heartlands. And the only way I see that changing is if you got that national exposure constantly being drip feed like other sports get.
But that's where sort of World Cup comes in terms of international rugby league can reach parts that club game can't, but it's then converting that into interest as the year goes on. And you're right in a way, in the sense that if it triggers interest, other broadcasters might want to compete with Sky. Because at the minute, if nobody's competing with Sky, they can just write a figure down on a piece of paper and say that's what you're getting. Because they're not going to give us money. They give us enough to function. They give us they still give us enough to function. They give us if they weren't on the table, nobody else would be at the minute, would they?
That's IMG's job, is to, hopefully they're smart enough to, leverage any extra opportunities that are created by the World Cup. And I know IMG have people going to World Cup games and going into the offices of the World Cup and working pretty closely with them. So it's IMG's job, really.
I think there are other broadcast outlets out there as well. I don't think you're going to get a huge sum of money from one broadcaster anymore. I think you do have to spread yourself a little bit thinner and pick up where you can. So Amazon Prime, for example, is always on the lookout for content. What we need to do on the back of a successful World Cup, an amazing grand final, whatever it might be, is entice other broadcasters. That's where IMG have their contacts. So I think you can see a time where Sky still principally pick the two best games every weekend, but we get to the point where, well, that leaves 4. What do we do with those? And one goes to maybe a Channel 4 and the production costs are paid. I thought they were brilliant this year, but they had 10 games. And because they had 2 or 3 at the beginning of the season and 2 or 3 at the end of the season, there wasn't continuity in the middle, so you couldn't tell that story.
It was very difficult to sort of engage with fans around when the timing of the next one was, because it could have been the middle of July and then it would be the end of August, so 6 weeks between them all.
So they need a magazine programme,
yeah.
Which again, who pays for that? And does that run complementary with the Super League show on the BBC? Is it something a little bit different because Channel 4 will do it differently? Which I think IMG will look at. But I do think there are other broadcast outlets out there. I think our league has been transformed into a World Cup viewing platform whereby, obviously if you're in an overseas area, that's your app. they need to amortise it. We may not want to pay another subscription to something, but if you were able to pay a £10 a month season ticket to our league, and there was always a Super League game on there, it might not be the first pick, it might not be the team you support, but if you felt, well, I'm prepared to pay £100 like NRL.com, and I'm always going to see top quality games, that's how I think you make money. But yeah, it's you're right. It's two things. It's participation, and it's how you get that greater spread. Participation, again, would take us a whole programme, but LMS is the classic example. There will be a lot more of him out there that we don't know about. His background is amazing. You know, he was a goalkeeper until he was 16, and then a local community team, or a friend of his, took him along to what was Greenwich Admirals, and he found Rugby League, and he loved Rugby League, and he went into the Colt system at London, and they had to send him out to Hull for a year to get an education, and then he came back, and look at him now. You know, he's had, 13 years here at Saints?
He took me down to St Helens Town to watch him 2 weeks ago, so I think he's on about going back to being a goalkeeper.
Yeah, I think they've asked him to play.
They sent him to Hull for an education.
a rugby, yeah, how to eat fish and chips and a Rugby League education.
Are we going to Hull on this tour?
By the way, Barrow just put up Barrow budgies. That's what I was showing. All the clubs are taking the mick now. Yeah, so.
Featherstone Flamingo.
Yeah, someone's asked where the live feed is, and they think we've been eaten by leopards. Any final questions? Yes.
I was just thinking, on social media, there's been a bit of a discussion around obviously the World Club Challenge. What sort of appetite in Australia is that? Because apparently.
No, well, it won't be on next year because of the demand on players. So the RLPA won't. They won't do it next year because of the World Cup. No, it won't happen. But the problem with the World Club Challenge is basically it's got to the point now where it's almost like you're bringing it's almost like you're bringing NFL players or Major League Baseballers here. You've got to pay all the money, guarantees. There's no prize money left because all the Aussie clubs demand money, and they won't pay you to go out there at all. So it's almost like a kind of a speaking engagement for 50 people to come over from Sydney. So it needs to be sold to. I think it needs to go to like a neutral. It needs to go to the Middle East, or you talked about Dublin. It needs to be sold as a property into a territory.
Dubai
yeah. But the problem is that the NRL don't. It's not compulsory. The NRL don't make it compulsory to play in, and it's controlled by the competing clubs. And you don't know who the competing clubs are till the second week of October every year. So there's no time to do it. So it needs to be taken over by the IRL or someone who actually an entrepreneur who deals with Super League and the NRL, and they sell it to a venue where it doesn't matter who's in it. It's already sold when you know who's in it. Now that's the only way it's going to have a future and be properly leveraged. But again, you've got TV deals where the broadcasters in Australia and Sky. What makes money for sport now? It's TV. It doesn't matter if people are in the ground. It's TV. Well, it's already included. As soon as they cross the sideline, both teams, the game is free to Channel 9 or Fox and Sky. It's included in every deal, so it can't be sold. Your biggest money-making aspect of any sports event is cut off. You can't sell it to TV. So, well, what they have to do is extricate it from the deals. And is there actually any enthusiasm in Australia? You've got to tap people on the shoulder 1,000 times. Remember the World Club Challenge? Can you leave it out of the next TV deal? Every TV deal in Australia goes for 5 years. So, as I said, if you can't sell the TV rights to a sports event, how do you put it in the calendar? And who's got the incentive to work on it and put hours into it when you can't make any money out of it?
Do you not think now that the NRL have gone insular? Because it just seems to be like, it's the State of Origin games, it's the NRL games, but they don't care about internationals anymore.
Well, they don't own it, and they're voracious commercially. You know, like Peter Volandis and Andrew Abdo are very, very commercially savvy and voracious, and basically the international game is a property they don't own. So people were arguing with me with the Denver test that using NRL players was using their IP. And how can an independent promoter be given our IP and we get no nothing back off it. So they consider the players to be their IP the same way the NFL consider the players to be their IP.
Well, I know I went to games, like I've been to Wembley against Australia, I've been to Leeds, I've been to Old Trafford, and they were all big gates. You know, there were 60,000.
But the money went to the RFL, then it split with the touring team, and I guess at those times also maybe the players weren't even full-time professionals. So they want to own everything, and they don't want leakage. They don't want their property leaking so that other commercial entities make money off them. They want to make every cent off their players and their clubs. And if the players come over here and play at St Helens, like for instance, St Helens weren't allowed to make any merchandise because they said all the NRL logos are copyright. So St Helens couldn't actually put a Roosters logo on anything. They are commercially voracious, and they don't want any leakage.
So effectively, we're sort of saying we're not going to
you've seen how often Australia have played recently. So I think they will. I think they now Peter V'landys is joining the IRL board, right? He's joining the IRL board. So all these things won't be relayed by a middleman. He'll be there to say what they want and what they want out of it, and it's up to the other countries whether they agree to his demands and what he wants or not. But yeah, it's a different world now. It's about money, you know. It's about money, and they're the biggest kind of show, you know, at the moment. So
we have voraciously run out of time.
Yeah,
I don't know what the word means, but and Steve needs to flop some books and hats. Yeah. Kyle, Mike, Steve, Faye, thank you very much for your time this evening. Thank you all for coming as well. We're going to do the draw in a minute for the tickets for the World Cup game on Sunday, I think it is.
Sunday week.
So we'll do that in a moment. But thank you very much for your time. Thanks for coming. And enjoy the rest of the World Cup.
Thank you.